yeah, just to give you a little bit of background and a little bit of a disclaimer, this is Food Storage Made Easy. We're actually excited to be here at this conference. There's a lot of topics, a lot of classes going on where we're excited to learn ourselves. This class is kind of more of a beginner approach on how to get started on your food storage. And if you are experts and experienced, maybe a little bit of motivation to refuel what you're already doing within your food storage. So, like was mentioned in our introduction, when we first started, it's actually been about 5 years now, I just kind of had this inkling to get going on my food storage. And I didn't know why, and I just kept feeling, oh, you need to do it, you need to do it. And I thought that, all of Utah was going to disappear into thin air. That's how strongly I felt about it. So anyways, I was overwhelmed. There's a lot of things when it comes to food storage that were overwhelming. I knew I should do it because you hear about it. But, these are kind of some of the words that were going through my mind, like earthquakes and things that, the word like yeast, I was like, all I know is that whenever I've tried cooking with that stuff, my food doesn't turn out, So I was overwhelmed. So I decided, I was talking to my sister-in-law one day, and I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to the store, I'm going to get a book, and I'm going to do this. And she said, well, why don't we do this together and blog about it? So we started a blog, and on our blog, at the beginning, we just would share things we were learning, and as we learned things, I'd make a spreadsheet to keep track of something. Well, we put it up on our blog, and we had, at the beginning, our sisters and our moms reading our blog, and so they would download the spreadsheet and get use of it too. And then it just kind of grew and grew, and then we've, over 5 years, have been able to share spreadsheets and recipes and tricks and things that we're learning in our own food storage and help people all over the world, really, because the internet's universal. So anyways, we are excited to do food storage. We like doing food storage. We started for the natural disaster inkling. I thought something was coming, but it didn't. Not yet, at least. But there were so many other reasons why we keep on doing it and kept on doing it. Economic crisis, obviously, people lose jobs. You'll lose money. Cash flow, if you have a food storage, you're good to go. You have it. You're safe. You're self-reliant. Everyday emergencies. That's actually not why I started food storage, but my favorite reason for food storage. I hate going grocery shopping. With 3 little boys, going to the grocery store is a nightmare. So when I have kind of all my food in my house anyways, I don't have to, and I run into a lot of everyday emergencies where I use my food storage. It's not just sitting in my basement, and I love using it. Another reason I love using it is health reasons. Cooking with your food storage can be very healthy. A lot of the foods that store for a long time are grains and legumes. You can use them and have whole foods, high fiber, high nutrient foods. So health reasons and religious reasons. A lot of different religions counsel their members to be self-reliant and to build food storages. So a lot of different reasons why people do it, a lot of different reasons that are good for it, and that's how I started 5 years ago. No food storage. My very first experience was to start with water. That's my little boy who's 6 years old and has a soccer game today now. But he's little there. And that's where we started. And now we have a good food storage that we use every day. So,
all right. So, as Julie mentioned, I was kind of obsessed with blogging and wanting to build a blog that people would actually read because nobody read any of my other blogs. And I figured we could do it together and be more successful because everything's funner together, right? So when we came up with the steps, I think the book that Julie got had some steps, but they were really hard. The first step was even really complicated. So we were I'm kind of like a Dave Ramsey nut, and he has baby steps. And I really like Fly Lady. She's a kind of house cleaning, organizing thing, and she does baby steps. And I'm very overwhelmed. I get super thinking of the end result, and I can't see how to get there. And so using these 2 systems with baby steps, I totally achieved a lot of success in areas in my life, and I was just we have to do baby steps for food storage. Then we only have to think about one little thing at a time, and so that's kind of how we came up with the baby steps, and the checklists piggyback with the baby steps. So the baby steps teach you things in steps. The checklists walk you through each step because we found that people were still getting overwhelmed even with the baby steps. So the checklists walk you through each of the steps and give you accompanying recipes and information on each of these steps. So actually, let me preface this. So before even the baby steps, we started researching and found that 72-hour kits should be before you even start to think about anything else. 72 hours of food, water, and supplies that you would need for an emergency. And that's kind of like a pre-baby step. So on our site, we call that the emergency preparedness section, getting started, things like that. So if a lot of people that are kind of interested in this already have that. It's something you can put together or that you can purchase a ready-made kit. So that's kind of our pre-baby steps. And then we move into step 1, shelves. A lot of times when we say, okay, and step 1 is, people guess water, because water is really important. But we found, like Julie's picture shows specifically, if you don't have a place to put it, you're not going to want to start buying it. But once she had her shelf in place and went to the grocery store and bought her first things, she had somewhere to come home and put it in, and it gave her a little warm fuzzy. And for a couple of months, every few weeks, we'd be like, here's my shelf. Look, it's getting fuller. Like, we look back at some of the old stuff we posted, and it's really embarrassing. We're like, why did people even want to read this? It's so embarrassing. But it's really satisfying. And, and also, we like to talk about this because the first thing you think of when you see food storage shelves is you think, oh, so I have to get a $300 shelf before I even can start building my food storage. No, you don't have to get a $300 shelf to do your food storage. We went and bought cheap Walmart shelves, or I think I even had one in my basement already. And then from there, I started to think, well, don't you need to rotate it? That's what those shelves are so great for, the rotation. And so I actually, we were on a pretty tight budget. Obviously, I was interested in Dave Ramsey, so we were budget conscious. And I was talking to my husband about this wanting to be able to rotate my food, and he found some plans for how to make your own little rotator shelf out of cardboard. And we did a little tutorial, and it was really fun and exciting because I could feel like, oh, now I have a place where I can put all my little cans that I'm buying, and it made me really happy. So step 1 is awesome for getting going, getting started. It's something cheap that you can do. It's free if you do cardboard shelves and stick them in your pantry or anything. And I think a lot of the keys to keeping going with something is to feel like you're having successes along the way. So getting some shelves is a great success. So step 2 is water, because I'm sure you all have heard that you can live for a few weeks without food. I don't know that I could, but without Cafe Rio for 2 weeks? No. But water is, a few days at the most, maybe even 1 day. So water is key. Also, water is used to cook most of your food. So water, we felt like, was important to be one of the earlier steps, plus it seemed a little easy. Although now, as we've learned more, it's not necessarily as easy, but you can start easy. So, I had juice containers I'd buy for my kids, or Diet Coke bottles. If you want to just take water containers that you already have, then you can just fill them up with water, add in a little bit of bleach, and you have water storage started. Okay, that's a really good first step. As you start to kind of use your food storage more or practice emergency scenarios, you may start to panic about water. We've seen some people who try to save a whole year's supply worth of water. I would not have room on my whole property to save a year's supply of water, I don't think. But I think that's an awesome goal to shoot for. But, if you're just getting started, you don't need to think that large of a scale. A really good recommendation is 1 gallon of water per person per day for 14 days for cooking and eating. That doesn't include cleaning, laundry, washing your dishes. Paper plates are great for that. So yes, for cooking and drinking and eating, 1 gallon per person per day. So there's a lot of different containers. They have camping jugs that you can buy for $6 or something for 5 gallons. Those I don't think are great for long-term water storage. I had some in my basement and they leaked, and a whole jug spilled all over a bunch of stuff in my basement. So that was not fun. And milk jugs, the plastic breaks down in those. And my grandma had those leak all over her basement. So this is why if you follow our blog, you get to see all our mistakes, and then you don't have to make them. Yes?
And also, you can't get all the bacteria out of the food jug.
Milk jugs, right. And that's a concern with soda bottles and juice bottles, too, for a lot of people. So a lot of people don't, the bleach can get it out. Some people don't like using bleach. There's other water purification things. I think that goes a little beyond baby steps. So we kind of say, do something, get started, even buying little plastic water bottles and have a case of those under your bed. Anything to get started is awesome. When you get into the 5 gallon or 55 gallon drums, we hear from a lot of people who got those on a sale or had someone donate them one, and they never filled them up. Okay, water barrels are not going to do you any good if they're not full. So if you have any containers at your house that are not full, we challenge you to go home and fill them up. I am guilty. I moved in November, and I don't know how it's April already. I still have not filled my containers. It was winter. That's my excuse, right? So you can do 55-gallon barrels. Another option, I really like kind of the mid-range, like 5-gallon, 3-gallon type containers, because if you're actually going to use it, do you want to try to be siphoning out from your big 55-gallon thing if your water shut off for a day? Like, that's kind of annoying. But if you have like the little containers, or they have water bricks that can store even outside, water boxes that have Mylar bags in them, there's tons of options for water. But basically just get something, get started, and you can kind of learn about the rest later, because I think we sort of got caught up in, well, what about when your water disappears and it's gone, then what do you do? So, you can learn purification skills if you need to do that in the future. But for getting started, start with collect a little bit of water. Okay, 3-month supply is a lot of times when people teach the 3-month supply. You want me to do the next one first? Okay, well, I'm just going to intro first. So when you think of a 3-month supply, you think of foods you normally eat. So a 3-month supply of foods you normally eat. This is not like your long-term wheat and beans, unless you always eat dried wheat, which we didn't. So one thing with 3-month supply that we like to teach, when we can teach a whole class on 3-month supply, because people sort of get hang-ups with like, what is a 3-month supply? And so we ask people to start with these 5 questions. Why am I building a 3-month supply of food? The reason why you want to know why is because if you're doing it for a natural disaster type situation, you probably don't want to include freezer foods, because you probably don't have power if you just had an earthquake and your house is ripped in half. If you're doing it in case of job loss or hyperinflation or something like that, then freezer foods are great. You may, if you lose your job, you're probably still going to pay your power bill. So you can have access to these foods in your freezer. And so when you're planning your 3-month supply, include freezer foods in that. We like to do a combination of both. What kinds of foods do I want to include? I forgot my notes on that. Oh, that's right. Okay. So your 3-month supply, Julie mentioned a spreadsheet that outlines, you put in all your recipes, like each ingredient from your recipe, and say how many times in the 3 months do you want to make that, and it'll populate how much you need. So if you use 2 cans of cream of chicken and a box of pasta and some rice or something, then that'll say, well, to make that 10 times in this 90-day period, you need this many cans. And so that's been a really great tool to use, but some people get all intense about like, okay, well, if I'm making pancakes for breakfast, I need to put in a teaspoon of salt. So how much salt is that in a 90-day period? Okay, you can get as little detail or as much detail as you want. We kind of consider if things are going to be just in your pantry long-term storage anyways, like flour and yeast and those kind of things, you don't really need to include them in your 3-month plan. But if you aren't storing those already, then you may want to consider those. How will I plan what to buy for my supply? So that goes into our spreadsheet. Now, if spreadsheets kind of freak you out and you don't like computers and you don't want to be that detail-oriented, that's Julie, okay? When we went to this step, to create this step while we were making our blog, I started getting panicky, okay? I'm the panicky one of our friendship. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how many. I don't have all these shelf-stable recipes. And she said, oh, that's so easy. I know what I buy at the grocery store. And she wrote it on a little recipe card, like 10 things. And she's like, I'm just going to buy lots of these. So easy. I've got my 3-month supply done. And I got a panic attack. I was like, I meal plan every month, and I don't know what I buy all the time. And I need to make sure I have 90 days worth of stuff. I was going like letter of the law on this. Like, I need 90 meals of food. So it's kind of your own style. So you can kind of do just a general buy lots of what you eat, or you can do it as detailed and nitpicky as you want if that gives you a happy feeling inside. How much money can I afford to budget? That's a hard one, because I think a lot of times people don't, who thinks they have as much money as they want to do whatever they want? Okay, I did not feel like that when I got started. Julie kind of, when she was started doing this step, said, I think I'm just going to go and buy it all at once and be done with it. And I struggled a little because my husband went to flight school to be a pilot. It cost $70,000 in student loans, and when he graduated, his first job was $20,000 a year, and we had 2 little kids. So you can try to do the math and realize why we were loving Dave Ramsey at the time. We were already eating beans and rice because we couldn't afford anything else. So at that time in our lives, we had Dave Ramsey teach us to have cash envelopes, and so you have your budget, and each month I was spending $150 on groceries. I don't even know how that's possible these days. But that's what I was spending, and I was like, I can't just come up with another more money to get my 3-month supply. So my husband and I at that time had personal money. So we have our allocated envelopes for all of our family necessities, and then we each had $25 that we could spend on whatever we want without talking to each other about it. So I bought Diet Coke with mine so that he wouldn't give me grief. And I don't even know what he bought, probably car parts. He could buy one thing every year. So I talked to him, and we kind of had like a little family discussion meeting, and I said, I feel like this is really important. Would you be willing to sacrifice your fun money with me for a little while we start on this 3-month supply plan? And he agreed, maybe unwillingly, and I agreed, so we gave up that money. We had $50 a month. And I said, okay, I'm going to figure out how to get the best bang for my buck with $50 a month. So I started couponing. There's tons of resources on couponing or just even sale shopping. There's a website called Deals to Meals where you can just print out where everything's the cheapest that week and go price match it at Walmart. There's tons of ways to do it. And the beautiful thing about this is after three or 4 months of doing this, and so stockpiling with $50 a month, buying all these things, because I made my spreadsheet, so I knew exactly what I needed to buy. So whatever was cheapest, I bought all the things for my spreadsheet that month. After a little bit of time, it started to be where I was spending less in my $150 because I didn't need to buy those things because I already had them on sale. So my grocery budget was coming down, and I had extra money, so I wasn't even needing that full $50 to go towards my 3-month supply. And the beauty of that, I realized, was now I can take that $50 that I've been spending on 3-month supply and start funneling that towards long term. And so if you're, budget conscious and struggling, that's kind of a process that you can go through. But the reason I feel most passionately about this step is about 3 or 4 months into doing this, my husband lost his wonderful $20,000 a year airline job, and we were unemployed for 3 months. And I had enough food already by then that I could feed my kids. And so we lived off of our savings, but we didn't have to spend that $150, well, $200 by that point, because with our extra, on groceries. So that was a big deal. When you only spend $1,500 a month on your total bills, if you don't have to spend $200 of that, your unemployment can extend a little longer before you really start to panic. And so that, I always joke around with Julie that she was feeling that urge to do food storage because she needed to help me, because I needed it, and she pushed me into it. So you never know. And I feel really strongly one of the reasons why is because of that. That can really help you. And, if you don't have to worry about feeding your family, then that's very much of a less stress. So how much money can you afford to budget? If I could do it at that point, then anybody here could at least get started on their food storage, even if it's only $20 a month. And how will I shop for my 3-month supply? That's kind of, I touched on that a little bit, but my mom did hers, and she just went to Winco and bought it all. She didn't really care about trying to find the best prices. But a lot of people will just go and buy like one extra can of something. So whatever they bought on their grocery list that week, they just bought a few extras. And that's one way to do it. That's less stressful. It's easy. Maybe tracking your inventory might be a little bit hard. But if you're doing Julie style, where you just buy extras of what you normally buy, that works great.
Okay, so after you kind of get a handle on the 3-month supply, that's when we suggest you start thinking about the long-term food storage. And when we say long-term food storage, we mean wheat, beans, things that you're going to be able to store that have a longer shelf life, that you'll be able to cook your staple foods from. A lot of the long-term food storage stuff, when you get started, may mean stuff that you think you'll have to figure out how to use one day. Eventually, though, what we've found over the years is that the 3-month supply of foods and your long-term foods start to merge together. When we first started, there was a big distinction in my mind what 3-month versus long-term meant. 3-month meant your canned foods, your box dinners, stuff you can make meals with quick. Long-term meant wheat and beans, and I didn't really know what they were. Today, I cook with wheat and beans all the time. I don't even have a 3-month supply. So eventually there is a merge that can happen, but at the beginning, it really is kind of, 3-month foods you normally eat, until you figure out how to use the long-term. So the long term, what we suggest is practice with it first. In Utah, we have closer by now, when we started the store Winco. I don't know if you've been to the grocery store Winco. This wasn't around when we started, but now they have it. They have bins and bins of different flours. So if you're just getting started, you don't have a wheat grinder, you've never seen wheat, you don't really know what you're doing, well, you can go buy flours from there, test it out, buy small samples of things before you buy 300 pounds of lentils and you don't like lentils, buy a little bag, mess around with it, see what you like. There's a lot of different legumes out there. When we first, let's get into the foods. When we get into the foods, I'll tell you what we've learned about those different kinds of foods. But there's a lot of different foods out there, and try it before you buy it. On our website, Jody mentioned there's a spreadsheet for 3-month planning that you can download for free, and that spreadsheet will tell you to put in your recipes and your ingredients. It calculates it for you. We also have a spreadsheet on your long-term planning. The spreadsheet on your long-term planning is a basic calculator that gives you how many pounds of different life-sustaining foods to have. Those life-sustaining foods are grains, legumes, and sugars and oils. That's pretty much it. We also have a different version on there that's the healthier one that has alternatives. So just because a calculator says you have to store something, if you don't eat it or if you're allergic to it, just substitute. And on our calculator, we tell you how to substitute. A lot of times with grains, you're just going to substitute pound for pound. So there's different ways to substitute the foods out. So step 4 is actually just dedicated to planning, kind of figuring it out, getting a feel for it, getting an idea of what it is that you want to store, and then going forwards with that. So step 5, 6, and 7. These are what we kind of call your more traditional long-term food storage foods, and this is what a lot of the traditional calculators will tell you to store. First one being grains. Step 5 is grains. When we started this, I didn't know what wheat looked like. I'd never seen it. I had no idea. And I was telling Jody, and she said, well, you know what? My neighbor has a wheat grinder, and she puts wheat in it, and it's crazy, but it comes out as flour. And I drove over to her house just to go to her neighbor's house to watch this wheat go through this fantastic magic machine that made flour. And I looked at Jody and I said, are you kidding me? Like, this is just flour. This is just flour. Wheat is just flour. I cook with flour. I know what to do with flour. And it was like one of those aha moments. I can do this. And so I did it. And I was so proud of myself. And it's silly in retrospect, but at the time, and I have a lot of friends that still don't know what wheat looks like, so I know I'm not the only one that didn't know what it looked like. And baby step by baby step, we've learned so much more about different grains. Now I use all kinds of grains. I actually don't even use wheat that much. I use quinoa, and I use brown rice, and I use multigrains. I use millet and amaranth and all these things, these words that sound like Egyptian language, like who's ever heard of these things? I use them all the time, and it was because I started at that baby step. I didn't jump into using quinoa, or I didn't jump into using amaranth. And now I do something even weirder than wheat bread. I do sourdough bread, which sourdough bread is bread made with a natural yeast, which is like, I don't know if you've ever made those sourdough Amish breads that go around. Well, you can have a starter, which all it is wheat and water. So if there was real crisis, the fact that I have that skill of knowing how to use wheat and water to make a yeast, to grow bread, to make sourdough bread, that's really great emergency preparedness. Would I have started with sourdough bread? No way. Like, that's really intimidating. So baby steps with all of it, but then within it, you grow and learn. Step 6 is legumes, which was another really big learning curve. I had a really big learning curve on it. When we first started, I told Jody, I'm just going to store tuna. That's what I'm going to store, because I don't know how to, I didn't even really like beans. I didn't know how to cook beans. Dry beans to me were just these hard pebbles, like what do you even do with it? And so I was just going to store tuna and peanut butter and call that good for my protein. Well, I went to this food storage class, something kind of like this, over at Kitchen Needs. There is a store down in West Jordan, and they were doing a class on beans. And so I went with my sister because I figured I had to stop having such a bad attitude about all these legumes and learn. And so we went to this class, and this lady ground some white beans into flour. And with that flour, she made a cream of chicken soup with just the bean flour, chicken bouillon, and water. So she brought it to a boil, it thickened, and it was cream of chicken. And then she used that as cream of chicken. And I had just gotten off of cream of chicken because of some health problems or health concerns and allergies in my family. So I was so excited. I thought, I can use beans now. And so I started with bean flour. And then eventually I found out about this electric pressure cooker that could cook dry beans for me, because I had tried anyways, I'd burnt and wrecked many pans with beans because I wasn't a cook. A few years ago for Christmas, 6 years ago for Christmas, I told my mom, never get me a kitchen appliance for Christmas ever, because I won't use it. And now I get her kitchen appliances for Christmas. So beans were really intimidating, but I figured it out little by little. and actually use them all the time. And I even know the difference between a lot of beans now. There's black beans, there's pinto beans, there's different kind of lentils, and I like them all, and I use them all the time, and they're really healthy and they're cheap. A lot of times people think that eating healthy means you have to eat expensive. You have to buy all this fancy organic food and all this stuff. Well, grains and legumes are healthy foods, and they're whole and they're cheap. So there are ways of eating healthy and doing food storage together, and that's been really exciting for me, because I thought when I first started that I was just going to store it and not really use it and go about my regular cooking. But after a while, you start feeling like, what's the point of that? What good is having food that you don't know how to use? So I was able to integrate it into my regular foods. And then step 7 is basically like your necessary items for baking: your oil, your sugars, powdered milk. This is a big one where I say substitute what you usually eat. If you usually eat honey or sugar, use what you usually eat. What kind of oils you usually eat, you substitute. Oils are tricky because they don't last as long, they don't store as long, so you have to be a little careful in how much you store, but keeping them cool and out of light will help. So just basically don't be afraid of being a little bit of a rebel and storing what you eat and not what the calculator tells you to do.
I'm going to embarrass Julie for a second. Tonight she went to her bean class. Well, the next morning she calls me up and she was like, "Jody, I'm so excited to tell you about this. That class was so good. I actually had dreams about beans all night long." She was so excited to use them. We actually had a fight about step 6 because we were rotating who's going to write up the page for each step on our website. And we were like, have you used beans before? I'm like, I have this chili recipe that uses dried pinto beans. She's like, you're doing step 6. So that was our battle. And now she's the bigger bean advocate. So it's funny. You transition and you grow and you learn and you develop. But it starts with baby steps. So even if it's just a matter of trying something, then you'll get it. So step 8, 9, and 10, we started out by considering these the non-essentials, and now I actually consider them to be like the vital essentials to food storage. After starting to use our food a lot and trying to practice using the long-term foods, we realized that there was kind of a gap in some things that the normal calculators can't accommodate. So fruits and vegetables. Okay. You can live without fruits and vegetables, but it's not going to be very fun, right? You can live without chocolate, but I don't know if you'll want to, right? Okay, maybe not chocolate. Maybe it's something else for you. Maybe it is Diet Coke. Maybe you hate Diet Coke. I don't know. But so step 8 is your fruits and vegetables. And we kind of started this step. I got assigned to step 8 too because I had made jam with my mom. So she's like, "You're an expert on canning." Right. Okay, I remember when I first got married, and I was like, I am never going to can food. My mom made me sit and help her do canning. I'm not doing that. I can buy canned peaches. It's fine. And then as I kind of started buying some strawberry jelly store-bought, I realized it wasn't nearly as good as my mom's homemade strawberry jelly, and I was really sad. And so I made her teach me how to do strawberry jam, and then it kind of triggered these like childhood memories of home canned peaches that are so delicious, and I started learning that, and then they become blog posts, and we kind of went from there. But you don't have to can food to do food storage, and that's one of, we used to be worried, like, if we're teaching them baby steps and how to be easy, we can't intimidate people with canning. But some people, that's the cheapest way to do it, and it's going to be cheaper for you to can your own stuff if you have fruit trees or whatever, or can buy in bulk from a farmer's market, than buying canned fruits and vegetables. Another thing that we got really excited about was we started buying some of the Thrive food. It's Shelf Reliance brand. They have freeze-dried fruits and vegetables, so if you can't can your own food and you want to buy store canned, it has 25-year shelf life. So that's awesome. Like, my canned foods go bad in a year or two. So that's a really nice option. And like Julie, she still won't can. Yeah, with your mom only. She won't can by herself. But yeah, we always fight. It's in good fun, I promise. We don't really fight. So that was a really great option. And with those kind of freeze-dried fruits and vegetables, there's no preservative. So a lot of times if you buy dehydrated, it's preserved with sugars or other things that are maybe not you're interested in for health reasons or whatever, or preservatives. You can dehydrate your own. I've experimented with that a little, but that's something I'm still working on. So I have a dehydrator, and I have used it once for bananas, but that's something I want to learn a lot more about. But so with fruits and vegetables, there's so many different ways that you can do it. So figure out how you want to do it. A lot of people say, well, where's your calculator for fruits and vegetables? How do you figure it out? See, some people are like me. They panic about needing quantities. So my kind of feeling now is as many as you can, because that's the fruit you're going to like in an emergency. But I also kind of, I kind of threw out in my 3-month calculator. I said, well, I'd like to eat like at least a serving of fruit and a serving of vegetable each day or something like that, or at least one with each meal. And you can kind of calculate it out from there. So like my family will eat 1 whole can of peaches at a meal. So I go from there and say, okay, how many do I need if I wanted to have a year's supply? And one thing I do is I canned 2 years worth of what we would eat, and then we eat it for 1 year, and that year we only can 1, and then we kind of progress. So we're always eating 1 and canning 1 the next year. But you don't have to can, you can buy. Okay? Step 9 is comfort foods. Anything that would be pleasant to have. I like how Julie put in pizza there. We always joke, like, if there was a real emergency and you could still feed your kids pizza, then they're not going to even be sad, okay? When I mentioned my husband was unemployed and we were eating our food, and my kids didn't even know that anything was wrong. They were really little. But I remember my mom saying that she was like, we always knew when things were tight because Mom broke out the TVP and the powdered milk. And so, and that's a lot of people's memories about food storage is, that things are tight because you're living on your food storage, and it's disgusting, and we did not want to do that. And so we made a big point, let's figure out what we eat, and we'll make everything be available with food storage. And that's another thing with Shelf Reliance's food. And a lot of different companies of food storage, they have things like sour cream powder. Okay, I know Julie's probably so healthy, maybe she doesn't use sour cream, but I have a lot of casseroles that use sour cream, like poppy seed chicken, it's so good. And so instead of being like, okay, well, I can't include that in my 3-month plan because I can't have fresh sour cream, well, all of a sudden, all these different recipes have opened up to me. So pizza, you can store freeze-dried mozzarella cheese. There was like a pizza casserole picture going around Facebook the other day. I don't know if everyone sees these things, but it seemed like everyone was posting it, and it was like, you just put noodles and pepperoni and like sausage and ground beef and then all this cheese on top. And I was like, I could totally make that with food storage. And so I used like freeze-dried sausage crumbles and tomato powder with some herbs added and freeze-dried cheese. I didn't use the cottage cheese that was in it. I just put rehydrated freeze-dried cheese on top, okay? My kids loved it. It was totally shelf-stable. Well, pepperoni's not really shelf-stable, but you could have skipped the pepperoni. But they loved it. It was normal. So whenever we're living off of our food storage, my kids don't even notice. And is this in our other class? No, we do a little challenge every year on our blog where for a week we send out different emergencies, and you have to practice living on your food storage, okay? So there's something like maybe one day the water's contaminated, so you can't use any tap water. So we don't make it like everything all at once. It's testing yourself. It's a learning experiment. And okay, so I had decided that rotating my 72-hour kits was annoying. So I was like, I'll just buy those meal bars and throw them in my kits. They last for 5 years. That's perfect. I don't have to rotate out and have my stuff go bad. So for our challenge, one of the things was, you can only eat out of your 72-hour kit today. My kids did not enjoy this challenge, okay? We do this as a family, and you get your whole family involved. And at first they thought it was fun because we're like making some hot chocolate over our little stoves outside. They think that's fun. And then I'm like, and here's our food, guys. And I pull out these bars, and I should have put the picture on here, but my little girl, she's 6, okay? She takes a bite. No, that's my only lunch. I can't eat this. She wouldn't eat it. She would not eat. She ate 1 bite, and that's it. She would have starved for 3 days rather than have to eat these disgusting bars. Okay, they weren't that bad. My 2-year-old, on the other hand, ate his and hers, so I think he ate like 1,000-calorie meal with these he thought they were cookies, okay? Another of the days we tested MRE meals because I was like, well, that's better. At least it's like real food. Real food, right? Yeah, my kids did not. We made a whole smorgasbord. I'm like, let's try all these different ready-made meals, and it'll be really fun. And they were like, they ate one of them. And the other 4, my husband and I choked down. So practice using your food and store things that they're like. But yeah, so if there's an emergency, and you have no way to get food, and all you have in your house is wheat and beans or nasty meal bars that you don't know how to use or that you haven't ever tried, then your kids are going to have a little bit of trouble with that. So that's why, so that kind of goes along with comfort foods, like things that your kids like, things that will feel normal to them, and you can buy, once you have your basics, yes, I can sustain life. Now start to look at things. What's going to make life normal? What's going to enable me to use food storage in my normal everyday cooking? And then lastly, step 10, this isn't food, but I decided that toilet paper is a necessity for me in an emergency. So we've got a lot of toilet paper, and when we moved, I depleted, and I felt like this real anxiety when I actually had to go to the store and buy toilet paper because I'm so used to it just being in my basement all the time. So toilet paper, toothpaste, deodorant, anything, feminine products. There's so many different things, and that's a great thing that you can do with couponing. Toothpaste, like you can get it for free with couponing a lot of times at Walgreens and stuff. Deodorant, same thing like that. So, they're not life-sustaining. So we added as step 10, but really we feel like that's a really important step to consider. And sort of along with that, or even beyond that, you can get into more of like, how are you actually going to cook with this food if there is a powerless emergency? But we don't even cover that in the baby steps because we feel like this is enough to get you started. You're going to be able to survive, and don't overwhelm yourself because you'll get to the more advanced stuff later. So basically, an overall summary of our 10 baby steps is be organized and make a plan. So you can't just say, I'm going to do food storage, and then maybe once every 6 months you go and buy something at Macy's, right? You have to kind of have a plan for how you're going to do it. What are your goals, and how are you going to follow them? And so the checklist that you're signing up for is great for that. A lot of people say, well, I want to do the checklist in a different order, or I want to do it all right now. If you feel anxiety like Julie did, maybe you're going to want to fast track it, so not take a whole year to do it. So we also put together, I don't think I brought it, a binder that has all the checklists in it, plus all of the information from our website. And so it's all in this nice little binder, and we're selling it here on a disc, or you can buy it on our website as a PDF. And so you print it out, and it has all the checklists right in it, all the information, all in one place, and then you can follow through and make your own plan like that. So you can get it for free on the website, or you can do it this way if you want to get it all at once. And even if you don't follow our plan, at least if you make your own goals and do a plan, then you're going to be better off than doing nothing.
Okay, so to finish off, we're just going to give you a few tips for actually using your food storage. A lot of people have food storage, but they don't use their food storage. So in our experience, these are some tips that we would like to share. I don't know how great the picture is. So here's just a couple pictures of, this was my food storage a few years ago. I took the blanket down from the window to take the pictures. Usually you don't want to have the light shining right on all of your food. Heat and light make your food go bad faster. So just want to throw that out there. This was some water, these are water boxes that have Mylar bags in there, and these were juice containers. Depending on how you're storing your water, and then down here you can see water bottles. So I had water bottles for drinking. If my water were to go out one day or 2 days just for like a short-term crisis, in my mind, I kind of feel like I'd rather just drink a water bottle than like pull out my water storage, because I think the water storage would I don't know. I think I would imagine a taste in there, a weird taste. So I'd rather just have my water bottles. But if it was like a real crisis, I'd get over the little weird taste and drink up. And sometimes if you have water storage that tastes a little funny, just pouring it in, like get a separate container, pour it in and back and forth. You just need to reoxygenate the water, and that's why it might taste a little funny. So there's a little tip about water. But anyway, so this kind of water I plan on using for either cooking or cleaning, whereas this may be for drinking. Or if it was a longer term, we have purification, and Jody talked a lot about this. So have different variety. This here is just kind of showing I like to store like foods together so that I can immediately get an inventory, know what I'm running low with. What I did in my old house is I made it so that everything kind of fit a certain way. Jody says she likes to plan things, so I'm actually the OCD one. I had it perfectly aligned, so if one was missing, I knew that was one that was actually missing in my plan. So I had it lined up a certain way and like barred off to be, if it's full, it's done. And that way I didn't have to think about it every time, because there's a lot of like apps you can buy that like you can totally plan and inventory everything, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to sit and inventory everything. But if I know there's like a blank spot, that means I need to buy it. So, position your food in such a way that that'll help. Store like foods together. These are like condiments, and I have like one of every condiment that I need. Or fats and sugars. Store like foods together helps. Upstairs, to using my food storage, I have a little bread cupboard. So everything I need for bread, because I make bread all the time, I have in that one cupboard. So half the task of making bread is gathering up all your stuff and pulling out all your stuff. Well, it's all right there, so if I need to make bread, I go to my cupboard, pull it all out, make my bread, put it all back. And that feels a lot less daunting to me to have to cook when I have it all together, because that's something I do often. Another tip is I have one of everything upstairs. I don't store a lot of my food upstairs in my pantry, because if I did, then I would just get lazy and I wouldn't go downstairs and get my food storage and rotate it. I would come home from the grocery store, put the new stuff in the pantry, and then kind of forget about it. But by only having one of everything upstairs, I have to go downstairs, put things downstairs, and then use what's old or new, or what's older first. And now that I have, my kids are a little bit older, I can have them do those jobs. And it's awesome, except for sometimes they go down there and take stuff and don't tell me, and then I'm out. This one is store small containers of your grains upstairs. I keep saying upstairs and downstairs, but what I mean by that is not in your food storage or closely acceptable or accessible. So I buy wheat in big 5-gallon buckets, like there's room for that up in my pantry. Well, I keep a little bit of all my grains where I can use it all the time, so it's not just stuck in my basement, barred off, never to be used. So I'm always using it because I have a little bit of it upstairs too. Practice. Jody was talking about pizza before and cheese. Practice those foods that may not be just completely straightforward. Like freeze-dried cheese is great and it is good on pizza, but if you don't know how to use it in times of crisis, you don't want to add the added stress and anxiety of not knowing how to use it. So what I did with some freeze-dried cheese once is I practiced using it, and I learned how to hydrate it properly, and now I know how to use it. So that's just a little bit of confidence added to my repertoire of things if there was a crisis. This is an example of, food storage comes in ebbs and flows. You're not always thinking about food storage, always doing food storage. Sometimes I just store my stuff that I bought at the top of the stairs, and then when I'm ready to think about it, I go downstairs and I put it together, and I put it on the shelves, and I think about it. A lot of people, if you have that type of personality where you get really gung-ho about something and you make all these plans, but then you don't ever do anything, what good is that? So recognize that, maybe this week I'm going to focus on food storage. Next week I'll focus on, the soccer schedule and the thing I have to do for work and the thing I have to do for my community. Don't think that you have to commit to a lifestyle where all you ever do is think about food storage. Think to yourself, I'm going to focus on it for now. We like to do family night, food storage family night. We have a fun little activity on our blog. It's a 72-hour kit scavenger hunt. And so we have little pictures of all these things that you might need in your food storage, and you split them up among the kids, and you go around your house and you gather it, because a lot of times you have stuff for a 72-hour kit in your house. It's just not all together. So that's a fun scavenger hunt. And then you go to the store and you finish off what you were missing. If you're doing all of this food storage by yourself and not involving your family, it's a little bit more daunting and not as fun. But when you get your family involved, we cook with our kids a lot. My kids, when their friends come over, they go to the pantry and they pull out the freeze-dried fruit snacks, and my little 6-year-old gives them a lesson on food storage. So involving the family makes it more fun, and it makes it feel like less of a job and more of an activity. Who doesn't want to do things as a family anyways? So, and then this is my inventory system. Jody mocks me about my inventorying, but I'm the one that made the spreadsheets on our website, just so you know. I do know how to use a spreadsheet, but for me, that's not how my style works. So just find your style. I like to have a list downstairs, and when I use something, I write it down, and then when I restock, I restock. So, because I know that I'm not going to get into this whole big master planning thing, I know just do your own style. So that's what we like to teach a lot. You know yourself, you know your style, do that. So something is better than nothing. I think we're pretty much done, but we can answer questions.
I just had a question on the last picture about
Mm-hmm. Where do you get those canisters? So the red lids are cashew containers from Costco. So after we finish, so a lot of containers stuff you already buy, those are cashew containers, and then the top ones I just got at Walmart. And there's a store, it's called Industrial Container Supply over near the airport. They have all these containers. It's like a dream to go there. It's so fun. They have all these different things. You can really spend hours. Yeah, there's containers. There's actually, like, when you're looking for them, they're kind of everywhere. Mm-hmm.
We lived, after the last shakeout,
Mm-hmm.
we lived for about a week off our food storage and without water or anything.
How'd it go?
It's kind of
It is. Jody was talking about our 7-day challenge before. You can talk about, think about, research, read till you're blue in the face. Go 1 or 2 days without power and you'll learn way more in those 2 days. When we did our challenge with water, I realized, if I wanted to kind of like give my kids a quasi bath, if I was giving it to them in the bathtub, I was losing a lot of water, but I put them in this like Rubbermaid container. And so then I saved the water, and then I could use that water for like mopping the floor or something, the leftover water. So, and that was just by doing it, I realized this is all going down my like drains, I don't want to do this. So then the next time I tried it with that. Or like little squirty bottles.
just doing the dishes, you realize how much water.
Or like how much water you use when you're cooking and how often you put your hands under the tap to like rinse off. You realize. So that is definitely a good challenge. Whenever, however you can, practice and you'll learn way more than if you just read about it. So come and see us at our booth. We have a table over there. If you have any questions, we'd love to answer them. And if you want to try some of the vitals of our food storage, we have a little bit of yogurt and corn and strawberries and some snacks you can try. They're behind our table for people who came to our class.